All right, thank you for the introduction and thank you all for coming. Um, to the extent which I'm even qualified to talk about best practices, I do want to share what I've learned specifically in the areas of content creation. All these slides are available here. I'll bring this link back at the end as well. For my background, I'm a math professor at Emporia State University, and I started adopting OER in the spring of 2019. Since then, I've received 2 grants. These are internal ESU Craig program grants. The first grant was for advanced calculus, which is a graduate level course. And then recently we were awarded, and we, like most of the math faculty, were a part of this grant. I kind of the head person on the writing committee, but this is a grant that was co-written with, I think, 7 or 8 of us to revamp all of the calculus 1, 2, and 3 courses to use OER. So that's our big push right now. Since starting my OER journey, I have adopted OER in 8 of my courses. I think I only have maybe 1 or 2 graduate level courses where I'm still using some kind of paid textbook, but otherwise I'm free materials across the board for all my students. And probably the area where I have the most expertise is in creating lecture videos and really focusing on accessibility issues. So when it comes to best practices, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is accessibility, because whether it's screen readers or auto captioning or just in general, there's one common thread. Math notation is hard for screen readers. Math notation is hard when you're talking about auto captioning a video. And I guess just in general, math notation is hard. And I don't mean that in a just like a math is hard joke. What I mean is that math notation is one of the barriers to learning mathematics at every level, all the way from elementary school all the way up to graduate and postgraduate education. The notation can be a stumbling block. And so when I'm creating materials or adopting materials, kind of at the forefront of my mind is how can I make the learning process easier? But there are also some more generic challenges. When it comes to creating lecture videos, you have to think about storage and backups. Even if you're referencing online materials, you have to make sure that the materials that you choose are going to be accessible going forward and they're going to be maintained. And then one challenge is just kind of always present, especially if you have courses that connect to other courses, which is you have to make sure that everything fits together. And when you are required to do that, then it can be difficult to get buy-in when you're fighting against the inertia of, well, it's always been done this way. Specifically with accessibility, PDFs, especially in mathematics, are ubiquitous, but they often have very poor accessibility. Well-designed PDFs, you can probably search them just fine, but if they have notation in them, then you're going to run into problems there. So there's some web-based formats that can be a lot better. And I have a couple pulled up just to show you what options are out there. And I know that not everyone out there is a mathematician, but some of the web-based textbooks are really innovative in certain ways. So again, ignore all the math notation, but the key underlying thing here is that in a PDF, you wouldn't be able to search for this, but screen readers with this way of compiling a textbook can make sense of the underlying notation here. There are also nice things that you can do with the web-based textbook where you can pop in theorems and back and forth, which this is a huge feature when you're trying to reference material that keeps building on itself and building on itself and building on itself. So this is one of the formats that I've really liked when it comes to OER. A lot of the newer OER math textbooks in particular use this format where you can, they're more screen reader friendly and they have this kind of back referencing ability to make it easier for students. One part of the grant that I received for advanced calculus was to create lecture videos for that material. And it was over the book that I just pulled up on the screen. And my initial thought was to do it incrementally. I would do one semester where I record all the videos. And then in the next semester, I would go back and I would caption all those videos so that they have good captions going forward to make them more accessible. And what I discovered in my second semester of doing it is that captioning videos after the fact, at least for me, was just the worst task ever. I had a hard time finding anything that I'd want to do less than caption videos and listen to myself speak over and over again, especially because there were filler words to figure out. There were cases where I'd have to catch mistakes and then I'd have to fix the transcripts. Just so many different things go into captioning videos after the fact. And I know that some universities might have departments where they can give their videos to somebody else to caption. That can be difficult depending on the level of subject knowledge that is necessary. And then the other thing is in mathematics, there's so much notation. How do you want to caption the integral of x squared plus 5 over x cubed minus 6x dx equals, and go on from there. If it's just a string of text, there's no contextual information to really help parse out what's going on. And then the other accessibility concern is I want to make the materials, whether it's text or video, available in multiple formats for a variety of reasons that I'll get to later. So I do want to share my captioning process. I'm not going to go into details here. I have a talk tomorrow where I talk about technologies that help facilitate the OER process. And at any number of these steps, you can go from cheap and free up to you buy a device to kind of do it for you. But I found that caption videos after the fact was just way too much work. So I started to instead write a script that I would read for my videos. And because I was writing the script, I had the flexibility of being able to insert all these special math notation. And again, not everyone's gonna be a mathematician, but they're probably in a variety of disciplines, different kinds of notation or special symbols that you might want to use that you would not normally think of being part of a transcript. I look at a lot of math videos online, and very rarely do I see the standard math notation showing up in the YouTube closed captions. Usually it's auto captioned, but even if it's been human captioned, you're not necessarily going to get the notation showing up there. So that was one of my goals when I set out on trying to get captions for my videos. I wanted the captions to have the cleanest possible notation that I could get. So the way I did that was I was just typing these commands. And so some of these commands could be, sorry, the doorbell went off and I had to reorient myself. Some of these commands are common for math typesetting in other languages, but you can also invent your own. After that, I would use a teleprompter. So I would put a teleprompter right here. Initially, it was this. It was cardboard and duct tape and a little CD jewel case glass there. And I recorded a whole semester's worth of material just on that setup. And it actually worked. Since then, I've 3D printed a teleprompter and I've gotten a slightly better glass for it, but you can also buy kits that allow you to use a tablet or a phone as the scrolling thing. There should be a better term for that, but you can use it to scroll your script as you speak, and then have a very cheap all the way to a very expensive way of putting that in front of the camera so you can read while talking into the lens. Because certainly when you're looking into the camera and talking, that is more engaging than if you are looking down where you're writing. After I would edit the video, obviously there'd be cases where my script would have to change because I chose to say some things different from what I had in the script. And then I would run the script through a little program that would take out all the commands and put in the special characters. So where's the tab? So for example, this might be what the initial script looked like. So you can see I have sqrt2 for square root of 2, this int for an integral symbol, infty is infinity. And then after I run my script, I get this. So you see all the notation appears there. I've got Greek letters instead of those commands. So these would be what the captions would actually look like, which is a big improvement over just trying to type out the math notation in words. The other thing that I encountered is that I would type my script however I'd want to read it, but when you caption things, you can't have long lines. So I would shrink it down to be about 60 characters long per line, which is about 2 lines of text in YouTube. And then this is the part that it makes it a lot nicer, that even if I was reading from a script and I recorded the video, at some point I have to sync up all of my lines of text with me speaking. And that can be an incredibly tedious task, but YouTube has this functionality built in. So if I upload my video to YouTube, even if that's not the final destination, if I go to the subtitle option, I can upload my script and just tell YouTube that this doesn't have the timing in it, and it would do some processing to sync everything up. And while it's not perfect, it's really good, even with all the notation, because YouTube doesn't understand the notation, but it's going to find enough words that match up with what it's detecting in its auto-generated transcripts that you get a good synced up captions. And then if you don't want YouTube as your final destination, you can just take the captions file, edit it if you need to, and then download those synced up captions. And then you can put those timed captions with the video on any platform of your choice, whether it's Kaltura or Panopto, which are the ones our university uses at Emporia State, or whether you want to put it on some other video sharing platform, any place that allows you to upload captions, you can take those captions directly from YouTube and then put them back. So with this process, and I will go into it, I'll actually show an example of it in my talk tomorrow. That's what this bit.ly link is to my slides tomorrow, which are definitely not done, but I will show an example of how that looks and how, if you want to, you can look at, actually, I might do this. I'm going to mute it so you don't hear it. You can see kind of what the captions look like, where I'm getting some of the notation showing up in the bottom here. Oh, let's see. So you're seeing some deltas and epsilons are showing up. The sideways E for X in S is there, and a variety of other pieces of notation that are so common in mathematics. This is much nicer to read than if the word delta were written out. And all this was a script that I wrote, followed by me uploading it to YouTube to let it sync my script up with the video. The other thing that I spent a lot of time thinking about was student access. I talk about whether you want YouTube to be your final destination or something else. I'm always starting my OER creation process with the end goal in mind. So if I want students to have captioned lecture videos, I have to start the whole process with that in mind. And that was actually a shortcoming of my first attempt. I made a bunch of videos that I started I'll make the video and caption it after the fact. And I realized that was just not going to produce a good end result. So I have to think about how are students going to view these resources. So if it's going to be a textbook, do I expect them to view it on the web? Or do I expect them to view it as a downloaded PDF? And what are the accessibility concerns with each of them? Am I going to make it available in a variety of formats? I also think about what I want students to take away from the resources. One of the things that I'll talk about tomorrow is getting students to engage with the materials and to build up their reading experience. And so that informs where I'm going to place the materials. Sorry, I am seeing a question in the chat about having access to the PowerPoint slides, which yes, I will bring that link back up. I have a bit.ly link right at the start that I can put that in at the end. And I also have to think about what I want the students to do with the resources. So for example, when it comes to a textbook, I do make it available as a web page that they can look at. I put it on Perusall so they can comment on it. I give them a PDF that makes it available for them to download so that they have some offline options as well as some online options, some options they can print versus not. When it comes to videos, I do put my stuff on YouTube as just unlisted videos, but then I'll also re-upload them to Perusall, and I'll also make them available sometimes on our university system. And it's important to note that not all platforms are created equal, that some are very locked down versus open, that some are going to kind of let you do what you want with the material versus others are not going to let you export things as easily. For all the problems that might be associated with Google, YouTube does give you a lot of options in terms of how you can create, manage, control, and download your content and get it back out. That said, you probably don't want to rely on it either. And of course, I'm going to be thinking about resources that are very mobile friendly, but also don't require you to be on mobile. The pretext textbooks has a very good mobile formatting. So this is actually a great option if a textbook is written in this format. It is very mobile friendly with all these little pop outs, and navigation is all very easy, but not, if you are primarily sharing a PDF, those are not as mobile friendly. So these are all considerations that you should be thinking about when deciding what materials you're going to use. One thing that is of kind of the utmost importance is backups. So I think I had some short little quiz solution videos that I had uploaded, and I think I deleted them from a past semester, but it actually deleted them somewhere else as well. And those are the only copies of those videos that I had. So this semester, I have to re-record all of my quiz solution videos, which will be something I have to do in about 30 minutes. So my error there was I did not keep a backup of these videos. My lecture videos I'm much better about. I do have those backed up in multiple places. So the general rule is a 3-2-1 rule. You want 3 copies of anything that's important. You want it to be in 2 different formats, and you want at least one of those locations to be offsite, which with cloud storage being what it is now, that one is probably a lot easier to get. Now I have all of my videos backed up to YouTube. In fact, that's the primary place that I have students watch my videos. But I also have them on the Google Drive associated with my university account. And then I have the local copy that has all of my transcripts and all of my editing changes when I was making the videos. But you cannot rely on any one of these sources to take care of your stuff long-term. You never know what could happen with YouTube in the future. So if I put all of my eggs in that basket, maybe it becomes very difficult for me to get those videos out, or maybe the videos go away somehow. Or even if it's not YouTube's fault, you can accidentally do things that might be that you can't undo. You might accidentally delete a video, and once you delete it, it's gone and you can never get it back. So that is why it's really important to have it in multiple locations. Another area of best practices, which is not an area that I am the most experienced with, but you should study your licensing options and look at terms of service. So some people are very uneasy about giving YouTube any control over their videos and would not be comfortable uploading things to YouTube. I have not seen any problems with uploading things as an unlisted video. YouTube still gets the data, but they don't go out and share it. And I still maintain control of them. I can also in YouTube change the license. I can say, no, I actually want my stuff to be easier for other people to share, so I can upload it with a Creative Commons license. It, of course, does not hurt to put the licensing information directly in the video description so that anybody that comes across your video can then share it as they desire. So you can see that I have it as a Creative Commons license with attribution, non-commercial, and share alike. And in order to do that, you have to know how your materials are licensed or how you want them to be licensed. As part of the Craig grant that I received, there is a certain requirement about how my videos are licensed. So make sure that you're abiding by that. If I'm using a textbook like this online one, I have to know how it is licensed and make sure that by me posting it in these different places, I'm not running afoul of that. So it really is worthwhile to familiarize yourself with, especially the Creative Commons licenses, and figuring out what all these symbols mean. After you read them, it's not that difficult, but I think I was scared away by the sheer variety of them for so long that I kind of put off actually learning something that I should have learned much earlier. So of course, here's creativecommons.org/licenses. That's a good place to go to get started. And I will again plug what I'm talking about tomorrow. I'm going to talk about Perusall, which is collaborative annotation of OER materials, also non-OER materials, but I only use it with OER. I'll talk about how you can make a homemade teleprompter. I'll talk in more detail about how you can get YouTube to sync up your transcript with your recorded video, and more information about how you can insert, whether it's math notation or your own discipline special symbols, or whether it's special Unicode characters into the captions. So maybe if you're working in a foreign language and you want those characters to be easier to have in the captions, I will share some ideas about how you can make that process a little bit easier. And I might talk a little bit about how I sometimes use OBS to enhance Zoom Classroom. So we'll see. That's not directly related to OER, but it's something that I kind of work a lot with. And that is all that I have. I'm going to go back to my title slide so that I can, or I'll leave it here for now, and then I'll go back to the title slide to share the link to the slides. So are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Tom, for this presentation. I don't see any questions in the chat yet. So if anybody has any questions, then you feel free to share those questions with Tom right now as he's going there to share the link to his slides, since I know that that was the question we had earlier about the slides themselves, and that way you can have access to it. And in terms of the recording too, we're recording the different sessions, so you should be able to get a link and be able to see the recordings of the presentations at the end of the conference. So definitely be on the lookout for that. There's a question, Tom, that it says, the one that it says is, do you use library materials?
Library materials. So I guess I probably should, since my wife is a librarian at Emporia State. I have not used library materials. All the materials that I use largely come from aimath.org/approved. I just need to do this, AI math approved textbooks. This is the American Institute of Mathematics, and they've gone through subject by subject in mathematics to find the best OER textbooks out there. And every textbook that I've adopted has been somewhere in that list. I'm less familiar about the best places to go for other disciplines, but at least for what I've needed to do, this has been everything that I've needed.
Great, thank you. That's good to know. Would you mind putting that link in the chat, since I know that people might be interested in case that's something that they would like to go into?
Absolutely.
And then I have another question. It says, how do you balance scripting your lecture ahead of time with making it feel engaging for students? They say that they always feel like I always feel like my spontaneous lectures feel more engaging, so I'm hesitant to script in advance. So what's your advice on that?
Yeah, that's a tough one because it is absolutely true. My unscripted presentations I tend to have a lot more energy, and they feel more like me than my scripted videos. That said, when I do it unscripted, and I went back and tried to, script things after the fact, I was catching dozens and dozens of places where I misspoke, where I said the wrong variable name, or just all these little errors. And I thought, man, that could be incredibly confusing for a student when they're just verbal slip-ups to me, but those little errors add up. And just re-recording until I get them perfect. It's like when you write something, you usually can't see the error until you give yourself some time with it. So it's a balance I'm still trying to strike. I have found that if I give myself a little bit of freedom in the opening, so maybe as I'm introducing a topic, that I let that be a little bit more freeform and I caption that after the fact, it works out well. It also helps if my script is not just a one-time thing. I script it, then I practice my script, then I change it, and then usually by the time I get ready to record, that's probably the third time going through the script. So I'm able to add a little bit more of myself back into it. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that I am just as much myself with the scripted video as I am when it's unscripted.
Awesome. That's a great idea. I always, it's always like you said, when you're recording something, you have it scripted, but sometimes when you're spontaneous too, it's like, how do you balance that? It's always that challenge. Somebody else has another question. It says, excellent information. And then they said, will you talk a little bit more about the time involved in preparation of materials, particularly in making things accessible?
So thankfully, in my discipline, a lot of the people that are moving towards OER in mathematics kind of have accessibility more towards the forefront. So what I'm showing with this book, this is more the rule than the exception anymore. So I can look up a lot of the textbooks from the AI math example, and they are all using pretext. I should say they're all, but a lot of them are using pretext. So if I'm looking at introduction to proofs, I know that I think mathematical reasoning has an example of that. I know there are a couple, I think active calculus by Matt Bolkins is using pretext. A lot of the big books that are currently in development and being worked on are written in this style. So accessibility, my accessibility concerns don't require me to use a whole lot of extra time. I still do use PDFs in the classroom pretty regularly, but that's one thing that I have to be prepared to switch instantly if I have a student that needs it in a different format. And so I'm always kind of ready to make that switch. Something that's interesting about this one, this was Yuri Liebel, and his was only available in a PDF. And I just wrote to him saying, hey, I've got this grant. They're concerned about accessibility. How possible is it to take your PDF and turn it into a web page? He said, well, I think I saw something about that if I use this particular script, it'll just do it for me. And so he basically one day later went from only having a PDF textbook, which looked like this. One day he had this. I sent him an email, and the next day he had this. So there are some really powerful tools out there to make the conversion possible. And I'm very thankful for that, because it means that I don't have to put a whole lot of extra time into it. More broadly to the question about the time it takes involved in preparation of materials, choosing the textbook for me is not something that takes all that long. And there are so many kind of standard, unlike a lot of other disciplines, the curriculum for calculus is well over 100 years old. Like, calculus hasn't changed since Newton and Leibniz, other than how it's been taught. So the materials surrounding that area are pretty solidified, which means that you can kind of go from one book to another and not that much changes. So the taking my old materials and transporting them into a new OER framework isn't that much. I'm basically using the same handouts this semester in Calculus 2 that I was using a year ago in Calculus 2. I'm just updating the order of some of the things.
Great. Somebody said, thank you for this information. I teach a less commonly taught language, and this could be beneficial for grammar type lectures, so definitely it would be useful. They definitely said thank you for the information about mixing unscripted with scripted material. Anybody else has any questions for Tom right now about his presentation or anything else? And I'm just looking in the chat, or feel free to ask and ask him. Let's see, just checking.
I'm going to go ahead and put the link to my slides in chat, because I know that there's some other questions about where to get my slide. Oh, actually, I saw that someone already did that for me. Thank you.
There we go. Yeah. So let's see, just checking in chat. I think we covered the questions that they had for you in comments about the presentation and the slides. Anybody else? Any other questions? And definitely go and check out his presentation tomorrow to learn more about some of those tools and technologies. So Tom, it looks like there's no other questions at this time. Thank you so much for your presentation. We learned a lot. I'm really grateful. Thank you everyone for attending our presentation. It's ending right now, and we hope to see you at the following presentation that's coming up at 1 o'clock. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you, everyone.